Okay, thank you very much for hanging out with us. This is another episode of Swedenborg and Life. Great to have you here. We have great things to talk about, including we're going to talk about how the afterlife feels, which is our title, and we're going to break it down into these different segments. The difference between our outer and inner self. We're going to talk about how being let into our inner selves affects us based on what we love in the afterlife. And we're also going to talk about the communities that our spirits belong to. And if that stuff sounds really out there, well, it is. Welcome to the program. This is a service of the Swedenborg Foundation. The Swedenborg Foundation is a nonprofit group that works to get things like this out there, talk about the ideas in Swedenborg and see what it can bring to the conversation. And we welcome back to the show with us author Peter Rhodes, who I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but I consider him a good friend and a friend of the show. So Pete, thanks for hanging out with us again.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, awesome. So we're going to get into some text, which you guys can follow along. You just got to download. This is the link here. It's in the description of your video. Click it, bring the text up, and then we should be ready to go. So full disclosure, this episode is actually not live like the other ones were. We had to tape this because I wasn't in town for the day of. So if you leave your questions, we won't be able to get to them till next time. But I would say still leave them because we will pick them up when we can. And thanks very much for watching. But we will be answering some questions that we've gotten previously over the weeks that we've never gotten around to. So we're going to kind of do some spring cleaning here at the end of summer. All right. So let's. Before I was going to say get into the text, but I don't have the right mindset to do that. Well, as we usually do, we want to kind of tune into the heavenly side of the mind. That Swedenborg describes heaven and hell as these two influences on our mind, and we kind of want to tune out the hellish influence and tune in the heavenly. So, Peter, if you'd help us kick off here. So, what is sort of the hellish side of the mind as Swedenborg describes it?
Well, for me, it's all my thoughts and all my feelings that are centered on myself, my self-concerns, concerns about my reputation, what people think, the world, my finances, and gradually becoming peaceful to that and letting go of that. And you come into what they call a fasting mind, a mind that can be open to a different kind of more subtle, intuitive influence available to you when you leave aside the concerns for self and the world.
Yeah, man. So kind of tuning away from that concern for reputation, and I'll do that because when I first saw this shot, I was like, people are gonna think my shirt is too green because it is way too green. But I don't care what that does to my reputation. So you touched on it a bit, but so what is the thing we're trying to tune toward? You know, what is this sort of heavenly side of the mind, or that the mindset of heaven?
Well, my experience is, and what I've been reading lately, is that it at first appears like a quiet mind. Thinking comes to an end. And at first, the natural part of your mind thinks nothing is happening. But if you can stay with it, you start to feel a very subtle influence as affections. And then it starts to formulate thoughts, but they're not thoughts about yourself and not thoughts about your own concerns. They're thoughts that more involve other people, God, the nature of life. So, there's a statement in the Bible, there's still a small voice that knocks on the door, and it's sort of that very subtle. To the natural mind, it appears as nothing, and often my natural mind thinks it's sort of boring, but if I can stay with it, something comes to me rather than from me. So something new comes in, whereas if I'm paying attention to my own thoughts, I've been thinking those thoughts a long time, and I might like them because they're mine, but they get a little old after a while.
Yeah, so an opening to the potential of new thoughts and new ideas, and sort of that humility that's a part of it also. All right, we've got our map there. So now that we've got that set, let's get into our text here. We're going to start with just a little segment where we're at the beginning of the chapter, our second state after death, which this is page 65 of Our Life After Death, and we're just going to read this first paragraph and then kind of paraphrase a segment that comes after. Our second state of being after death is called the state of our inner self, because then we are brought fully into the deeper reaches of our minds, or of our will and thoughts, while the more outward interests that engaged us in the first state become dormant. And he goes on for the next couple of pages, which are fascinating material, but for the brevity and keeping the show within the bounds of time and space, we're gonna summarize those. He's talking about the difference between our outer and inner self and giving examples. And Peter, how do you understand the outer and inner self and the difference between the two?
Well, I think people now are getting more and more interested in meditation and quieting down of the mind, sitting quietly, paying attention to the breath. And it's not really that they want to pay attention to the breathing, but that in attending to that, I forget the phrase that Swedenborg just used, it becomes dormant, I think it said, that those internal dialogues and internal pictures about myself, my circumstances, and the problems of the day become dormant and quiescent. And then there's a whole different feel and a different awareness that is more subtle. It's hard to describe because it's not really natural. It's not really formed by natural concepts. So I think that quieting down and being open, and for me I experience, I would call it contemplation, or I have a question in mind that I bring into meditation. And during the meditation I'll have what we call aha experiences, or just a clarification goes on of that particular issue, or even a clarification about something I've been struggling with in my day-to-day living. And I'm aware of it, and it's real, and it makes an impact on me, but it's very difficult to put into natural words and concepts.
Yeah, and that because you're kind of getting in touch with this sort of inner, deeper reality of the inner self, and that Swedenborg goes on to describe that in the afterlife, we all have an initial state where we're in our outer self. You know, that we're just kind of in the same ego concerns that we've always been in, but then we have this period of being pulled into this sort of state you're talking about of the inner concerns, and you sort of see what what you're really focused on, what you really hold dear. And he talks about, he gives examples about, if I was to like, oh, I want Peter to think I'm cool, so I'm gonna, try to say smart things on this show right now that he'll like. That I'm using the saying smart things as a tool, but the real me just wants approval. It doesn't really care about the information out there. And we kind of get a chance to look into that. So that's our best summary of that. And so what we're going to do is move forward in the PDF past that segment. You guys can definitely take a look at it on your own, and I would encourage it. We're going to scroll down here to page 69, where we'll pick up near the end, and this gets right into what the title of this show was, which is How the Afterlife Feels. So we'll pick it up. To all the people who have, before I start, I want to say it's interesting that he said that the experience, just like the experience of life, is very different depending on what's going on inside of us. Here he kind of describes this, that what we love or what we value or our deepest intentions drastically affect what it's like to come into this deeper second state that he talks about, where we get to the core of who we really are. So he says, to all people who have led good lives in the world and who have acted in accordance with their consciences, that is, people who have acknowledged the divine being and loved divine truths, and especially people who have applied them to their lives. This is big. Swedenborg is very much about application, that knowledge on its own isn't really worth the time. That you've really got to apply things if you know them. So to these people, it seems that they have awakened from sleep when they are brought into the state that is focused on the inner self. They feel like people who have come from darkness into light. Their thoughts are actually set in motion by heaven's light, and therefore by a deeper wisdom, and their affections by what is good, and therefore by an inner affection. Heaven is flowing into their thoughts and emotions with an inner blessedness and pleasure they have never known before. This is because they are in touch with heaven's angels. So here it sounds like, Peter, he's describing sort of almost that in life, if you are cultivating these positive qualities that he was talking about. You mentioned that to the natural mind, this sort of inner state can kind of seem like boring. What is it? But it seems that on the other side, when the spirit is sort of freed from bodily concerns, that there's kind of this sort of expansion, and suddenly things are, you feel like you've awakened.
Yeah, I personally think when Swedenborg ever says, people who have led a good life, I rephrase that to the states within you that are truly good and living they can come into the state that you just described. The states which are selfish and self-centered, focusing only on yourself and your own concerns, I believe that's the sleep that we're coming out of. It's really the natural mind. Swedenborg would say it's not only sleep, he often refers to it as dead. Those states have no real life in them because they're centered on the self rather than others, and God, and so forth. So that moving from those states within myself that are really dead and have very little life to them compared to coming into real loves and real affections flowing from God through me, I think that's why you start to experience the state he's talking about. And I think we can have that happen here. Certainly it happens after the physical body and the natural mind die. But as they become quiescent in contemplation or in solitude or in meditation, I think we can have that experience even here now.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned him describing those states as dead states, and that there are times when we're here where dead states feel alive and alive states feel dead. You know, the sort of cravings of the flesh and of the ego. You know, we're going to gaining reputation, getting revenge, seeking highs of various kinds. Like that's, oh yeah, I'm really alive now, and this sort of like contemplative thinking about other people. It's like, what, you know, where's the fun in that? But that there's kind of this flipping that we can get into, you know, if we continue on the way. So thanks for that. Let's take another look at the PDF here. Then too they acknowledge the Lord and worship Him with their very lives, because they are in their own true lives when they are in the state in which they focus on their inner selves. And I just want to pause to say when Swedenborg is talking about worshiping, it's not just what we would think now of the external forms of, you know, praying and sitting and kneeling, and the worship is an act of, as you were mentioning before, Peter, of considering other people, looking to help, living with love. You know, so there's sort of a broader term that he's encompassing there. They are also acknowledging and worshiping Him in a state of freedom, since that is what our inner affections give us. In this way, they move away from an outer holiness into the inner holiness that is the essence of real worship. This is a state of people who have lived a Christian life in accordance with the principles provided by the Word. And now I would say, Peter, that when he's talking about a Christian life, he's meaning by that principles that are found in many faith traditions, right?
Yeah, I would say a Christian life is a way of living, just like it said that you worship God with your very life. It's not an intellectual or conceptual thing. It's not a denomination. It's your life becomes animated by God Himself through you. You're a finited form manifesting God's life, and that inner self that you become aware of, there's a lot of reference in the Hindu religion about finding the true self with a capital S rather than being all involved in the self with a small s. And I think that's what's being described here. You start to come to yourself, the true self, which is God's life within you, so that you can experience it as if it were your own. And then you're truly in freedom, because God now has an instrument through which He can freely manifest Himself, and you experience that conjunction with God's life and your life as one. So you're not only in freedom, you're in true happiness, and it's a verb. It's an activity. It's not an idea. It's not a concept. It's living itself. So when someone may say, do you live your religion and your living become one at that point.
Yeah, and it sounds like a pretty cool setup, and that Swedenborg often describes it. This, you can kind of enter into this partnership with God, with the divine, and you actually become more free there than you've been in. And it sort of sounds like, oh, well, if you're, you know, following God, you know, you don't really have your own life, you know, but actually you're in greater freedom there, because you're no longer kicked around by the desires and the negative thoughts, all this kind of stuff that kind of pushes us around to act and all that here. And I think touching one more time on this, how he talks about living a Christian life, that Swedenborg's audience was the Christian church of Europe at the time, but he often speaks of how the principles are found in religions throughout the world, and it's really, as he says, about this inner worship, that sort of acting on the base level of love and kindness. That's the real litmus test. You know, the external trappings, the forms, all that are sort of what come after. So yeah, Pete, did you have something to say about that?
Well, just saying, Swedenborg often talks about a church universal or a universal church, and that's a person who is living a life of good, and good is those loves which really want to make other people happy from yourself. So that's what true religion is, and different forms it may take, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism. Those forms are just like plants in a garden. The variety is really important, but they're all expressing love and they're all expressing life. So that's what I believe religion really is. It's not an idea or an organization. It's a way of manifesting good loves to and for others.
Yeah, and I have a little garden at my house, and you don't want just one plant in it because then it's not nearly as fun to look at. All right, so let's take a look back at our text. If you're just joining us, we're looking through Swedenborg's Our Life After Death. You can download it in the description of this video. Okay, so now he's talking about the other side, the ego side or the hell side of the mind, and what happens to that. What if that feels like in the afterlife? Quite the opposite, though, is the state of people who in the world led lives focused on evil, who had no conscience and therefore denied the divine being. Since all those who live in evil deny the divine being inwardly, no matter how convincing they are outwardly, and they are not denying but acknowledging him. And I think Swedenborg came up a lot against a lot of hypocrisy in the church of his time, and I think that's kind of what he's addressing here. This is because acknowledging the divine being and living in evil are opposites. When people like this in the other life come into the state that focuses on the inner self, they seem foolish to others who hear them talk or see them act, because their evil impulses force them to break out into wicked deeds, into contempt for others, into jeering, blasphemy, hatred, and vengefulness. They cook up plots, some of them with such ingenuity and malice that you would scarcely believe anything like this existed in any human being. They are then free to act in accordance with the thoughts of their will because they are separated from the outer self that restrained them in the world. In short, they lose their ability to reason because in the world that ability was not located in their inner but in their outer self. Still, to themselves they seem to be wiser than anyone else. And so it sort of seems like what he's describing is you don't really have a filter when you come into this deeper state that he's talking about, and so if you're real good at keeping your cool, even if you were even in these states that where you have some hostile thoughts towards your neighbor, there you just kind of blurt it out, and that doesn't make you seem very put together.
Yeah, I think all those states I recognize from my own life. I can suddenly be triggered by anger or resentment or judgmentalism. And for a long time, I denied that, I minimized it, I rationalized it, I justified it. Observation, I think Swedenborg talks about spiritual observation. And you start to observe your own states, and I can be, what we call triggered into one of those states, and where it used to feel right and righteous, now it appears to be stupid. And I watch it, and I can't even imagine that, those states are something I would contemplate, but my best friends can be looked down on, or I can be judgmental. So those states are certainly within me, and I think the more we look at them objectively, the more we can see the truth of their nature and the truth of the nature of the good states he's talking about. So yeah, there's a filter. I don't want you to know the thoughts and feelings I'm having sometimes because I'm concerned with honor, reputation, and gain. But in the other state, the world, those concerns aren't there, so the filter isn't there, and then what was internal starts to appear and manifest itself externally. You start to see the true nature of your ego or love of self.
Yeah, and that's probably not super comfortable, but maybe a good deal in the end, because if you really start to see it and wow, that this is ridiculous, and I look like a fool. If it never caused a problem for you, you never really think of, okay, I'm going to clean this out. That this really puts it in front of everything and gets, okay, maybe it's time for me to sweep that corner of the mind. All right, so let's take a look back at our text here. We're moving on to page 71. Once people like this are in the second state, they are sent back and forth repeatedly between the state of their outer selves and a recollection of how they behaved when they were in the state of their inner selves. Some of them feel ashamed and admit that they were insane. So this is kind of that examination that we were just talking about. Some of them are not ashamed at all. And so I guess some people are just like, well, yeah, I am who I am, you know. Some of them resent the fact that they are not allowed to be in the state of their outer self all the time, but they are shown what they would be like if they were constantly in this state. They would be constantly trying to do the same things covertly, misleading people of simple heart and faith by faking goodness, honesty, and fairness. They would destroy themselves completely because eventually their outer selves would be ablaze with the same fire as their inner selves, and this would eat up their whole life. And here I think you get a little peek into this process of being led into the inner self is not just to embarrass people or to get them back and say, look at how bad you are. The way that Swedenborg describes it, nothing evil is ever or negative is ever happening unless some good is coming of it. And here you sort of see that that people are being shown. Listen, if it's really just like with a cut, if it's infected and it's not cleaned out, it's going to get worse and worse until you have serious problems. But if it's out in the open, there's a chance to at least clean it and get it done. So it seems like here there's the same kind of function where it's like, okay, you gotta come to terms with this, or else it's going to be a real problem. Do you see that there, Pete?
Yeah, I think the process itself is a loving process. It's God is all wise and all loving, and the process is for your sake. It's not against you. It's not to embarrass you or shame you. It's to show the true nature of your own love of self or your own ego. If it's only focuses yourself, you start to see the true nature of it. So it's not against you. It's for you. I've been in a recovery program where you give your first step, which is basically where you tell all the thoughts and feelings you hide from everybody. And everybody has those thoughts and those feelings, and further on in that process, they call it the fourth step, you start to really look at where am I selfish and where am I self-centered and where am I only concerned with myself, and you're looking at that so that gradually you can start to surrender that and be open to something you've come to see as much better, which is God's will within you. So the contrasting opposites of the two is done so that you can discover, uncover, and let go of, so that you can be open to a new will, which is God's will within you. So it's a learning process, just like any learning. You make mistakes, and you may be embarrassed if you fall off your bicycle. So the ego gets embarrassed and shamed about it, but the spirit is just utilizing it in order to make this progress towards God's will away from our own will.
Yeah, so what can seem like, oh, this is disaster to the ego is actually good for us, and ultimately better for that state of mind. Okay, so excellent thoughts, Pete. Thank you very much. Those are ours. As I said before, this show is not live. It's pre-recorded, but we are still going to answer questions because we've had some in the intervening time that we want to get to. So let's pull up our first question here. This is from Robert on Facebook. Are there forms of spirit that can deceive with a misinterpretation of a beautiful face? And I think that's pretty apropos to what we're discussing here, because we're talking about sort of the inner and outer state, and is there that deception? And when I get a question about is there a spirit that can do something, my reference material is people who have had these sort of experiences where they see the other side, and I know Swedenborg certainly does describe beings, people who are in the afterlife who can project images. I know he talks about people he calls sirens who can appear beautiful even if they're not. Just like here, we can try to seem more beautiful than they are. Pete, have you ever come across any material about that kind of thing?
Well, unfortunately, yeah, just paying attention to myself. I can appear very nice outside, and I can be very polite and so forth, even with people who I'm having a disagreement with, and I want to look good. I don't want to look the way my internals are. So thankfully, I believe God has us born into a process that's relieving us of that kind of duplicity. And Swedenborg talks about a lot of counterfeiting real love and counterfeiting real wisdom. In fact, in his writings, he talks about people have actually been able to get into heavenly states because they talk so well and appear so well, but gradually the angels around them start to smell a difference. And yeah, I can even in myself, I may be talking nice and I may be looking nice, but I start to smell and perceive something isn't true about this and something isn't good about this. And if I look at it more closely, just like a counterfeit $20 bill, you start to see something showing up that this isn't really internally what it's appearing to be externally. So yeah, I've read about it and I also experience it, and it's not bad that I experience it. That's the true nature of moving from concerns of ourself and ego-based life to a life of God, religion.
Yeah, and I like what you say about examining it. From what I've heard about people describing contact with sort of like positive and negative things in the spiritual world or through spiritual experience, that even if something looks a certain, you look for how's the behavior. If and as you're talking about in states, like if I, like comb my hair and like scrub my pores or whatever, but you can tell that I'm coming on too strong, or trying to get you to buy this product or whatever.
Mm.
There's a pushiness that real love doesn't have. So thanks for that question, and let's get to our next one. This is from Violina on YouTube. When we pass over to the other side, will our mother still be our mother? Or will she just be someone we love dearly and are close to, but without the parent-child relationship? It's a very good question, because it's looking at the power of relationship here. And I know that, for some people, you say, oh, will our mother still be our mother? And for some people, it's like, oh, yeah, because I love my mom so much and I really want to be. And for other people, it's like, I had horrible experiences with my mom. So there's a whole continuum of what that relationship means. And well, from what Swedenborg is saying about the other side, that there are these kinships there, that he says people even describe them in terms of familial relationships, like, oh, this person is my father or mother, but is actually based on a deeper internal, your deeper loves. And do we have the same kind of core of life, what's really important to us? And relationships are formed, sort of tight relationships are formed from there, even if you still, the people that you are biologically related to here, you may still like them, you may be in contact, but not necessarily in the same way. However, seems like it could be, if you and your mom had a really close bond. Why couldn't you have that same bond in the afterlife? So those are a few of my thoughts about it. Pete, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I like what you said. Really, mother and the role of being mother, or motherly love and being cared for and nurtured and so forth. Those loving states, of course, continue. They may be manifesting through the form of your spiritual mother when you pass the other side. They may be experienced from other people as well. So I certainly have mentors that have fathered me in various ways and taught me and led me and so forth. I did have my mother experience was not so good. She had alcoholism and some other issues. But I did have a dream, which I think I'd mentioned one time, maybe even on one of these broadcasts, that I saw her in a dream, and she was free of all the natural diseases she had, including alcoholism, and freed from the angry and abusive thoughts. And I just saw her as she really was, and my relationship with her was very loving, and it's hard to describe. I don't know whether I could say it was motherly love, but it certainly was as deep and as meaningful for me. And it wasn't so much that she was mother and I was child. It was the essence of who she was as a mother and the essence of who I was as a child was relating to each other, freed from the natural corporeal concerns and natural corporeal diseases, angers, addictions, and so forth. So I think we're freed from all the things that interfere with that kind of familiar relationships, and we will experience them, I think, with our real parents, but also through others as well. Of course, God is our Father and so forth.
Yeah, well, Pete, I really appreciate you sharing that story. That really brings it home. And one last thing I want to add is that in near-death experiences, it seems like people are often meeting family members. So there's some kind of important thing, and that's just a really cool image that you put out there of free from all these conditions, and that what yeah, how much more closeness could we all have once we're freed from all of all of our various issues. So thanks very much, and thanks for the question. All right, so we're going to be moving on. We have one more. Let's take it. Never mind. Let's not skip this one. This is from Zena or Zena. I don't know. Pronunciation is difficult. Facebook. Will we ever have the divine pleasure of meeting God? And I would imagine the question is like meeting God face to face. Like, if you ever watch Bruce Almighty, that Jim Carrey meets Morgan Freeman and they can sit and talk. Morgan Freeman is God in that movie. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a good one. I'm guessing that's what, I mean, there's probably a lot of ways to meet God, but probably that's what they're wondering about. The way Swedenborg says it, yeah, God is a person like you or I, and there are times when, in heaven you can meet like people meet, but then there's also all kinds of other connections. Peter, did you have thoughts or comments on that?
Well, two. One, I think, yes, we will have that divine experience if we want it to see God in a finited human form. So we could have that. I think the first thing that came to me is it's probably going to be even closer than that. God is in you. There's a statement in Muktananda that says, God is in you as you, that you'll experience your very life is one with God. And I think it's John 17:14. He says, may they know that they are in me and I am in them and we are one. So I think it's going to be not so much a duality experience. I think it's going to be what they call a conjunctive or a unicity experience of suddenly what you've been seeking you experience as your very life, and it won't be an abstract experience. It'll be very loving, and love conjoins, and it will be a very, very close relationship, and it'll be very human because you're experiencing him as a human in your own human life. So it's hard to describe, but I think what we long for, we will experience probably in a way different than we're looking for it.
Yeah, but does sound cool. Sounds like a worth the price of admission, so looking forward to it. Let's take a look back at the text. Thanks everyone for questions. Again, the show is not necessarily live today, but we'll continue to take your questions from previous weeks. Okay, so we're on the middle of page 71. When spirits are in this second state, they actually look exactly the way their inner selves were in the world. And that's interesting because, you can certainly see, some show where, okay, this is some true crime show, this person has done horrible things, but they don't look scary, but this is sort of any negative tendencies that you have or whatever show up as they really are. The things they had done and said in secret are made public too, because now they say the same things openly, since no consideration for the outside world is restraining them. I just want to pause there, even though he's talking about serious things. I think about every once in a while, I don't know, Peter, you may not be like this, but I'll be sort of weird, and like if I'm alone, sometimes I'll say things to myself, or if I'm with somebody that I know really well, I'll just talk in a weird way, and then but I've had that experience a few times of like, oh, somebody else just heard that, like somebody that isn't in that little circle or whatever, and so I sort of think of that when I hear this from him, of this like, oh, they had no concern for the outside. We no longer have this like, oh, I gotta sort of seem like I know what I'm talking about. So I don't know if that's something you've ever experienced, but certainly is for me.
Well, I've certainly found myself singing in the car, and I don't sing very well, so I wouldn't want anyone to hear me in the car.
Yeah.
And I talk to myself, and I do all sorts of strange stuff, and I really enjoy it. But if anyone saw me, I would shut up immediately.
Yes.
I've also been in weekend-long, sometimes week-long workshops of various kinds when your concern of other people's opinions starts to leave because you start to feeling an acceptance from people as you truly are. And that's a good experience. And there's a closeness about admitting the crazy things that go on in our mind and the crazy feelings we have. And rather than put our name to them, we share about them rather than share from them. And when you try and relate to people as if you didn't have these weird thoughts and feelings going on, it's a very superficial relationship. When you include that as part of the human experience, then you can actually connect to people in a deeper way. And it's not that you're going to continue to have them and manifest them and want them. It's that we have them. We have those things going on, and we can share them with other people when we build a level of trust it used to be very frightening to me if things are going to be yelled from the housetops, which are said in secret. And then, like I said, I got in recovery where that's exactly what you start to do, and it's a big relief.
Yeah, I think that it's weird that that we all have this inner life, and we all know it, but we don't always talk about it, and we don't always share it. And I think shouted from the rooftops. Sorry, because Facebook knows all my information anyway now, so it's like that's over anyway. All right, let's take a look back at our PDF here. The things they had done and said in secret are made public too, because now they say the same things openly, since no consideration for the outside world is restraining them. And they also keep trying to do what they did before, but now without any of the anxiety they had in the world about their reputations. Furthermore, they are then brought into many of the states that belong to their particular evils, so that angels and good spirits will see them as the people that they really are. This is how hidden things are brought to light, and how secrets are exposed. As the Lord said, nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not become known. Whatever you have said in the dark will be heard in the light. Whatever you have spoken in someone's ear in your rooms will be proclaimed from the rooftops, which is just what you have been referencing, Pete. And in another passage, I say to you that for every idle word people have spoken, they will give an account of it on the day of judgment. So, it sounds a little bit scary, but in the end, for the good of everyone, because this life that we're living now of being covert and shielded, it's maybe necessary in some cases, but there's a better way to be a human race sort of out there, and hopefully we can all kind of work towards that together.
Well, I think we take it from the first half of life point of view of a judgmental, punishing God. And when a judgment is made, it's sort of like a parent's going to judge you, and then you're going to have to pay for it one way or another. In the second half of life and further on, I start to take it in a much more positive way. A loving and all-wise God is going to see you the way you truly are and to free you from that so that you can have His will within your will as if it's your own. So I don't take it as a negative thing anymore because I really trust. In fact, a reading this morning said that God is accepting of you as a mirror. He accepts everything completely and accepts it all within His love. So I think we have to let go of our fear of punishing God and replace it with a loving God who is going to help you be freed from those kind of crazy self-centered thoughts. But it's not against you, it's for you. I think of someone, breaking an egg. It isn't trying to hurt the chicken, it's trying to break the egg so the chicken can be free. He really wants to free us to be who we truly at the very deepest level are, not the first level of interior, which is our own internal judgments of other people and the things that are going to be revealed. So it's peeling away the onion to get at something even more valuable.
Right. Doesn't sound so bad after all. All right, we're going to take a look back at the PDF. We're on page 72. Every individual goes to the community where her or his spirit was in the world. And here he's describing a phenomenon where he said, actually, I was about to paraphrase him, but let's let him do it in his own words. As I mentioned, each of us is actually united in spirit to some community, either heavenly or hellish, evil people to hellish communities and good people to heavenly ones. Spirits are led toward their communities by stages and finally enter them. When evil spirits are in the first state that focuses on the inner self, they gradually turn toward their own communities. And before this state have been brought to a close, they are facing them directly. And I just want to take a brief pause to say that Swedenborg says that those communities that we associate with in spirit are actually influencing our mind now. It's not just that this is an after death, that it's sort of, just like the crowd that you hang out with on earth is influencing your thoughts and feelings and your opinions, your sort of spiritual peer group is doing the same thing. So when the second state has ended, the evil spirits hurl themselves into a hell where there are people of like mind. And Swedenborg always asserts this, that people that are entering hell are doing it because they desperately want to get there, because that's where the kind of pleasures that they're looking for are coming from. This is not God pushing you off of a cliff. To an observer, this plunge looks like that of someone falling backward head first. The reason it looks this way is that the arrangement of the inner self in such people is inverted, since they have loved hellish things and spurned heavenly ones. During this second state, some evil people go in and out of various hells, and while doing so, they do not seem to fall headlong the way people do when the process of their spiritual devastation has been completed. So it's talking again about the world of spirits, which is this place where you are when you're going through these states, being a preparation and really kind of a distilling and getting your inner and outer self to act in unison. So you really are who your true self, who you want to be, whatever that really is. So we're going to take a few more questions here. As I said, we're not live right now, but we are answering questions that people have asked over the week, and this is good for us to get a chance to get a hold of them. So let's take our first one here. This is from James on YouTube. I've watched all the previous videos and have been reading the book. Well, thanks, James. It's awesome to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. I've noticed that there are many references to angels and then evil spirits. Where do demons come into play, or are they just evil spirits? So, excellent question. In Swedenborg's, what do you want to call it, cosmology or theology or something, he says everybody in the afterlife was once alive in this life, that there are not specially created beings that are always good or were always evil. But he does assign labels to people in the afterlife based on what they love. And so he does he has this broad category he calls evil spirits, which would be people who are focusing on and pursuing harmful activities and love and are cultivating loves of harmful things. And I know he talks about people that he calls Satans, plural, are people who are focused on false ideas, and then he does refer to demons as people who are focused on evil loves. And Peter, have you come across that in his work, or did you have any additional thoughts about that?
Not on that particular terminology, but I have been paying attention to, there appears to be a state within myself that's mixed between good and evil. And Swedenborg talks about the world of spirits, where both are there. They haven't been completely separated out yet. And there are also states in me which have no good at all whatsoever. They are strictly evil in one form or the other. And there's also states within me that are very good, and that's where God resides. So he talks about those evil states within that mixed state differently than he talks about the evil spirits who have been vastated, is the word he uses, and have no good at all. They're very, very severe and very, very detrimental, versus the one that are trying to be good, but they still have a hanging on to some concerns of self and so forth. So those three, the mixture and the pure evil and the pure good, are states, and he does use different terms for the evil within the mix and the evil that's strictly evil. So that may be some of the terminology you're talking about.
Yeah, and good to take a look at, this state that I'm in. Could you, if I'm in something where I'm really negatively triggered, am I in a demonic kind of state right now? Is this just something I need to get out of, or is there something to work with here? So always good, because the way he describes the spiritual world is the inner world. So everything that we encounter there, as you mentioned, can be we can be mirrors of that or not, depending on what we're choosing. So let's take a look at another question. Janie0914, being an emotional person, I imagine when I see my loved ones and friends, I will probably cry. What does Swedenborg say about the emotions we show in the spiritual world? Yeah, man, I think there would be a lot of tears. And Swedenborg says we're still people. We die, and we're still people. And so people are going to cry when they, especially people that didn't maybe thought they would never see these people again or something. And then here you are. I can't imagine not being swept up by emotion. Then, Peter, did you have any thoughts on sort of what the emotions of the spirit and the difference in a next life?
Well, I think we're just the tip of the iceberg of emotions. I mean, I think we experience very little of the true emotions we have deeply within ourselves. I'm a therapist, and I know when you allow time and space and build enough trust to have people experience their emotions, they themselves often are surprised at how deeply that emotion went when they allow themselves to experience it. That's not emotionalism. I mean, it's true affections, and I think those affections are what make heaven, really. And yeah, we're going to come into those affections probably more completely than we can imagine. I bought these two big, they're called crying Buddhas, and they're curled in a sort of fetal position. And I thought the crying was a weeping, a sadness or something. And I came out of a meditation, I saw them, and oh no, they're crying with pure joy and love of the divine. And so I think emotions are going to find that is the other world, is the positive, loving emotions where we can express them without any inhibitions of concerns of the natural or our concerns about ourselves. So we'll come fully into those emotions.
Yeah, and I have also heard people that have had a near-death experience or something saying like it's so much more vivid there, and the feelings that you have, can be so much more intense. So it really, yeah, there is sort of another level of life experience that we can be looking forward to. So thanks, Jenny, for that question. We have one more here, which is from Don Cathy on Facebook. How can we keep evil spirits away and away from the children? So yeah, man, if there's negative, harmful presences, you wouldn't want that around. I would first say that as far as kids go, Swedenborg says that evil spirits can't be Peter had been talking about these sort of negative evil states in us, and that Swedenborg would say is kind of brought on by hell, but that kids have sort of a protection from that because they don't have things in their memory that kind of draw them towards negative things. So there's sort of an innocence and a protection around kids. And with as far as evil spirits go, I don't know, you find people all over the map. Some are doing like visualizations of white light around you. There's some people who are saging things, or down to like just trying to not entertain negative thoughts and not welcome those in. Those are a few of my thoughts. Pete, did you have anything to add?
Well, certainly there are things you can do to turn away from evil spirits and self-centered loves and so forth, and turn towards God or His will, or Thy will, not mine, be done. But I also look at it from the point of view of none of this is outside of, I believe, God's control. So as a therapist, I often meet parents who are trying to save their children going into adolescence from drugs or alcohol or sex or whatever. And they're not going to be able to do that because that's part of the process of growing up. So all evil spirits are utilized by God in this process of transformation. So it's much like antibodies. You need a certain amount of antibodies, spiritual antibodies, to survive this life and this transition from self to God. So I see the process as including that rather than, oh, I have to figure out a way to keep my kids from ever having any problems. No, they will have problems, and they will learn how to overcome the problems from the problems themselves. So I have much more trust in the process than trying to protect people, including my children, from that process. It's not an easy process. It's not a painless process, but I believe it's a process that always heads towards what is good eternally. So I'm more relaxed about it now that I'm old.
Yeah, now that they're grown up and all that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, and I also think of again Swedenborg's refrain on providence or God's governance of life, that nothing evil is allowed unless good can come out of it. So even those who are trying to be destructive end up serving the greater good, even though they don't know that they're doing it. Okay, so we're going to get back to our text here. We're at the bottom of page 72. The actual community where their spirits were in the world is shown to them, too, while they're in the state that focuses on the outer self, so that they realize that they were in hell during their physical life. But they were not in the same state as the people who are in hell itself. Rather, they were in a state like that of people in the world of spirits. So there's all this sort of a complicated geography there that he's describing, and he says much more about it. I think we'll leave it at that for now, but there's certainly a lot more to learn there. The separation of evil spirits from good spirits takes place in this second state, since in the first state they were all together. The reason is that as long as spirits are focused on their outer selves, it is like the situation in the world. Evil people are together with good ones, and good people with evil ones. It is different when people have been brought into their inner self and are left to follow their own true character or will. And I was thinking, Pete, because we've kind of had a theme here of looking at what Swedenborg is describing as people as states, that you kind of come to a point in your life when you realize, like, wow, I can't think like this at all. Like if I even get into these states or even entertain these kind of thoughts, it's sabotaging my life. I have to cut that out. I have to, like, cut carbs out or cut sugar out. Like I just can't have any of this.
Yeah. Yeah, as a recovering person, there are certain places I can't go. Well, I could, but I won't go because I don't want to get involved in that kind of lifestyle anymore. And there are also thoughts that I can't entertain and feelings that I can't hang around with anymore because they have nothing good to offer me. They used to have what I thought was good to offer me, and I found, as it says in the program, my life became unmanageable. So my internal world, I'm starting to have a little more discrimination, and that's a good thing. There are places that I used to go freely that I just don't want to go because I'd prefer to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I think so, and it's just good to start to think about what's got a future and what doesn't, and just sort of look when you're looking at the states of your own minds. All right, so we're back for our conclusion here. We're finishing up the chapter, our second state, and we're just going to get to his last few comments about that. So, again, we're not taking live questions this time, but we will get to a few more of the questions that have been there from previously in the week. Okay, so let's take a look at the end of page 73. All right. The separation of evil people from good ones occurs in various ways. Often the evil are led around to the communities they had been in touch with through their good thoughts and affections during the first state. This brings them to communities they have misled into believing that they were not evil by adopting the outward appearance of goodness. And I know, Pete, you had referenced that adopting, any of us can try to adopt an appearance of goodness when that's not really our intent. Often they are led around in a large circuit, and good spirits everywhere are shown what they are really like. The good spirits turn away as soon as they see them, and in the same way that the good spirits turn away, the evil spirits who are being led around turn away too, facing the hellish community where they are going. I will not go into the other ways that the separation of good and people from evil people takes place. There are many of them. And I want to just think about that turning to face that in the spiritual world, and we touched on this in last week's episode, the way that you're facing means more than it does here. That here you can just turn around in a circle, it doesn't matter. But there, sort of what you keep in front of you is what you care about. And that the time and space aren't what they are there, so there's this whole weird thing of no matter which way angels turn, they're always facing God. So I don't pretend to understand the whole thing fully, but I just bring it up because maybe some of you out there do. All right, we're going to take a look at a few more questions from earlier in the week. It's really great to have you guys on board, and even though we couldn't take them live this time, you guys still leave them, and then we can try to get to them next week, and because I want to continue to hear what's on your minds and what are your thoughts on all of this, because the more people involved, the conversation gets better and better. So let's take a look at our first one here from Benjamin. Is it possible for a non-physical being to torment another non-physical being so that the tormented non-physical being would feel compelled to plead for help with a physical being? Would they not be able to get help from beings on their own non-physical plane? So that sounds to me like Benjamin is speaking from experience of being asked for help. And I'm not an expert in this kind of thing. What I would say, all I can do is kind of parrot what I've heard from Swedenborg, etc. But there's certainly, as just like in this world, there are there's good ways of treating people and bad ways of treating people. So certainly people in the afterlife can inflict harm on each other. As far as asking us for help, I don't know how the whole thing works. The two worlds are connected. Swedenborg talked about an intimate connection there, so it could be that if there's spirits in an external sort of worldly state, that it may be there's a stronger connection to this world than to the rest of the spiritual world, but I wouldn't say that I know for sure in that. So there's my unsatisfying answer. Pete, would you like to improve on that?
Well, I would say we're all non-physical beings operating through a physical organism at the moment, so we're all spiritual. And I think our relationship, like you say, between the spirit that is currently operating through a physical form called a body and the spirits surrounding us that no longer have a physical form is a very intimate and close relationship. And I think, yeah, it's possible for a spirit who has a body to do something that will aid a spirit in that society where he is who doesn't have a body. I just think that's happening all the time probably. We're just not real attuned to it because we're so focused on the physicality of who we are rather than the spiritual. But I think as we look more at the spiritual aspect of who we are, the more we are aware of those interrelationships and being asked for help and being able to be of help to non-physical beings within our own states. So we're just seeing very darkly because we're in the physical world, but most of our life is really spiritual, not physical.
Yeah, nice. I like your answer. That's why we have people like you on the show. Very good. Let's take another one here. This is from Marcella on Facebook. Is it true that our loved ones that are in heaven, when we die and go there, is it true that they're waiting to greet us there? I think so. I mean, it seems to be a universal theme in near-death experiences is that your loved ones are meeting you there, and I would add to that, Swedenborg says that love brings presence in the other life, that their love actually can affect the space between you. So if there are people who love you and you love them, that actually draws you together. So that would cause a meeting like that to happen. Peter, do you have further thoughts on the topic?
Well, simply have a brother-in-law who lives in Hawaii. I've never been there, but if I go, I'm pretty sure he'll be the one meeting me at the airport.
Yeah, right. Touche, that is good. Okay, now we have another question to get to. This is from Sandra on Facebook. Last year, 2013, just before my grandma died, God revealed a dream to my hubby about my grandma's heavenly body. My hubby saw a beautiful young version of her new body emerging from her body. He said she looked indescribably beautiful, and God told him to tell us she's going to her heavenly home. A week after this dream, my grandma walked over to her eternal heavenly home. So thank you, Sandra, for being able, because it's a very personal thing with your grandma moving on, and you know the experience that your husband went through. So I do like to hear, you know, where that kind of stuff touches people's lives. So appreciate you bringing that in, and that just brings sort of a realness to it. And so thank you everyone for watching, for commenting. We're going to end the show today, as we always do, with our segment that's called Correspondences. It's a short little meditation where we try to apply this principle that Swedenborg talks about for a great length of time, that this physical world corresponds to the spiritual world. So the images that we see in the physical world of the objects are actually representations of deeper realities. And if we are seeing these physical representations, yet contemplating the deeper realities, we can get kind of an insight and a connection there. So today we're going to talk about the stars. And Swedenborg says that the stars, one of their correspondences is to what he calls the societies of heaven. Not that angels are up in the stars at Alpha Centauri or something, but that the arrangement of the stars we see there is like the arrangement of these different communities in heaven, and this sort of the gathering of different people with the same kind of love into these little communities, and sort of the aboveness of the stars, that's a pretty good word, is like the heavens coming from what is higher to where we are now. So as we look at this 40 seconds or so of imagery of stars, just think about the community of heaven and our communication with them, and just see what you get, see what comes. So that when I saw the first star picture, I was actually like a little bit moved by it. That's beautiful, and that's what heaven looks like, shining on us. I thought it was cool. Hopefully, you guys got something good out of it. Obviously, the stars are even better in person, so go take a look at the night sky and apply that concept that we just had there. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us today. If you want to support the program, help other people come across it and see it, the Swedenborg Foundation is a non-profit, and any little donation will just go to help spreading this show to others. So thanks very much. Peter, thank you so much for hanging out with us today. I really enjoyed this conversation with you and your insights, and we hope to have you on the show as many more times as we can before they cancel us. So thanks for hanging out with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All of you, we'll see you next week, same time. So thanks very much for all your questions and everything you bring. It's really fun to have people to talk about this with and to go over it with. So you make this possible, and really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.